Hello, and welcome back to the Geek podcast. We are your hosts, Joel and Sebastian. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Domenick Yoney, the host of the Batteries Included podcast. We'll be discussing everything EV related and hearing about Domenick's journey in the podcasting world. So, without further ado, let's plug in and give a warm welcome to Domenick Yoney. All right, we are thrilled to have Domenick Yoney on the podcast today. Domenick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are y'all?
Doing great. Thank you for finding some time in your busy schedule to join us for a little bit. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of like your journey to EVs or to EV ownership.
Okay, well, myself, let's see, I don't know where to start. I'm from Canada originally. That's kind of an interesting thing about me.
Okay.
I moved to Florida in like 2020, Y2K, just in time for Y2K, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been here ever since. But it was the big Hurricane Katrina in 2005. You know, that really kind of brought me into this whole electric vehicle situation. You know, because I saw all the this is a tremendous amount of damage, and I've been aware of like environmental issues for a while, and it just got me. I'm aware of CO2 causing global warming and climate change. And so, seeing how fast, a city can break down, like the society can just break down. I was like, man, that it kind of put the fear of God into me, so to speak. And, so I just started thinking about, okay, well, what can we do to, lower our carbon footprint in transportation? So I looked at, and at the time I was just like, delivering auto parts basically for a job. That was like my job. I've had I've had a whole series of different jobs in different fields. I mean, different things, blue collar, worked did some office work for a while. Anyway, so I just started thinking about this question a lot, and for a while I was looking at biodiesel and things like that, or ethanol, and just looking at the different things. And then the electric vehicles kind of showed up on my radar a bit. And the more I looked into it, the more everything just sounded pretty good. Not too good to be true. There's still lots of issues and problems. But this was back in like 2008 or something.
Oh wow!
Then right,
yeah.
So I started reading like this website called Autoblog Green, which is like an offshoot of Autoblog, which is still around today. And I would just write in the comments all the time, and I was following all the developments in batteries and electric vehicles. And finally, they put up a submission, looking for contributors, writers. And I don't really have any background in writing per se. I was okay in English, I guess, in school, but I wrote songs basically in the 80s and 90s. I wrote some songs, which is very different from writing about cars. But so I just started doing it. I tried it, and they accepted my whatever application, whatever they hired me. And then that was a journey just to get better at just just being a journalist, learning how to be a journalist, and writing about cars, and then learning. So basically, I've been writing about and studying electric vehicles and how we can use them to, hopefully get this climate under control eventually. As part of the solution, not everything, but it's part. We can't do. It can't be everything, or no one can be be all about renewable energies or more low carbon farming or things like that. Anyway, this is my area that I'm trying to make some sort of I don't know, get some sort of positive result for myself and the world, I guess. I don't know how to say that really, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
So what were some of the challenges you faced when you first started driving an EV?
When I first started, well, it took me a while to actually save up the money to afford one. So for a long time, I when I first got here, after a couple of years, I bought this it's a 1988 Ford Ranger STX. It's like 4-wheel drive little pickup truck, which is great for me at the time because I was doing a lot of outdoor things and kayaks and things like that. But then I started writing about EVs and learning about more EVs, and I kind of wanted to have one. Obviously, right? You're writing about something and you're I was pretty enthusiastic about it, but man, those price tags, way above what I could afford. I mean, I don't come from money. I've been, especially my early adult life, been pretty poor. It's fine.
Yep.
But as you slowly get older and a little more stable life, you kind of slowly built up over time some money, and so getting the money just to buy my first EV, which was a 2015 Spark EV, a little Chevy Spark, which I loved. And I got it for like $9,000, and
Nice.
I don't like taking loans or whatever, so I had to, paid for it, and
that's what you got to do.
So that was the hard part, and it was so the Chevy Spark is like a short range car, so I just used it in town, and on the odd occasion where I need to go all the way, like stay to the coast or something, I would just use my truck. But that became more and more rare. I mean, I still have my truck, and it hasn't really moved in over a year. It's in my garage, collecting dust or waiting for it to be converted to electric itself somehow someday.
So, random question. Did your Spark EV have the DC fast charge option?
It did.
Did you ever use it?
I tried to use it. It did not work.
Oh, okay.
We tried at the Electrify America station, and we have in here. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, in North Florida. So yeah, I tried it a couple times. I even made a little video of me trying. I didn't actually publish the video, but it was before I really got into YouTube a whole lot. So it did have the fast charge thing, but I never really get. Mostly I charged it with on a 110 outlet. For like 2 years or whatever. So,
which is a small battery, so you can do that. Yeah.
It's a small, and you don't drive that, most people, they only drive, I don't know, 10 kilowatt hours worth a day at the most. So it's not too hard to replace that much energy with a 120 volt outlet or whatever.
Yeah. Second random question, and then Joel can move on.
Yeah, that's fine. Go on.
How often did you accidentally smoke the tires of a Spark EV?
I'm not sure about accidentally, but when I sold the car, the front tires are basically bald, like slicks. Like it was kind of dangerous, really. I shouldn't really been driving in the wet. Yeah, I'd have to be super careful, right? But it was a 2015, so I think it had just a bit more. I think they're what you call. It wouldn't spin quite as hard as like the earlier ones.
Yeah.
Traction control. Yeah, it was a bit improved, I think, over earlier versions. But that thing was a blast, though, like a hot hatch. I kind of wish I kind of had one now because.
Yeah. So Joel, if you didn't know, the original Spark EVs when they first came out would spin the tires till they got to like 40 miles an hour.
Really?
Yeah. It was like 300 pound-feet of torque.
Oh God!
In a like tiny car.
Yes.
With tiny tires, yeah.
Sebastian knows everything about small Chevy electric vehicles.
Right?
There's not that many of them.
Because he's a Bolt owner, so yes, because there are not many. So yeah,
right.
That's
which
why
also will spin the tire somewhat.
Yes. I mean, we had the EX30, which is small. We couldn't get that to spin the tires. That's 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, and we did not spin the tires in that one.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's what you need. That good, sophisticated traction control.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how you can tell. Like the new Chevy Bolts, the last Chevy Bolt, it'll when you cut the wheel and nail it, it'll spin a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun, but in my mind, I'm thinking it shouldn't really do that.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. Yeah, they should cut power, and I don't know.
Yeah. So that figures us to our next question. So, you've had EVs, you've had your Spark, and I believe you have your Model 3. What improvements over that time frame of you following EVs has impressed you the most?
Just over the whole
the trajectory of EVs. What's technology improvements that impressed you the most?
Actually, what's really kind of been impressive to me over this whole time is the rise of LFP batteries, or lithium iron phosphate batteries, as we used to call them back in the day. Now it's like, we used to have a whole formula for it. Now we just say LFP, and it makes it so much easier and everything. But Yeah, before, because they used to use these a lot in like conversions, early conversions, and they were coming from China, these cells, and they're usually prismatic cells. And so people would put them in their car, and they would be super heavy, for one. And then they also have like really bad voltage sag. So you nail the throttle and your voltage kind of goes, 400, 200, so you lose. It's just, it wasn't a great solution, really. And so I've been really impressed at just how far they've come with LFP batteries. So they've improved their power density or energy density quite a bit, and the voltage sag thing isn't really a problem. I mean, there's some issues with cold weather, I guess, but all in all, it's. And then is it CATL or Geely? One or both of those companies have like 5.5 and 6C LFP batteries, so they charge like in 10 minutes, basically. Like the C is, just how much energy of it's.
I can't ever remember all the Zeekr models, but yes, the Golden Brick or whatever they called it, that's like 5.5 C in peak condition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when Zeekr. Apparently, Zeekr itself, just that brand developed. I know Geely also has battery production and engineering, and CATL is like the biggest battery company in the world, and they of course have that very same or similar technology with LFPs, but they also want to get it the energy density. They have goals to get the energy density up to whereabouts we're at now with NCM or whatever, regular, what do you call them? They say ternary batteries, because they have like usually three different minerals involved in the anodes. So magnesium, so LFP batteries is really kind of like over the space of time so far. It's just how they've improved has just been pretty amazing. And there hasn't, and conversely, the other traditional batteries or lithium batteries haven't really improved nearly as much as I had thought they would by now. I mean, like, I'm really kind of shocked. We're still at, I feel like we've been at like 280 watt hours per kilogram for forever, basically. The gravimetric, they call it the gravimetric density of the cells. It just hasn't really been moving that. I mean, just more recently, there's been a few different, bigger improvements. Like with NEO, they have a semi-solid state battery, which is, I think, 350 watt hours per kilogram, which is nice. So they put that in that 150 kilowatt hour pack that you can get from swapping stations. So if you have if you live in China, you have a huge road trip you want to go to, you can go to up to your swap station in your NEO and get like 150 kilowatt hour battery and swap out your whatever they have, 77 or 75 kilowatts hours usually. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. So moving on, what is the biggest misconception you think people have about long-term EV ownership?
I think generally, people feel like they're going to have to replace the battery. Like that's like something that's going to happen. If you buy an EV, you're going to have to face this huge battery replacement charge at some point. Which is like when you buy a car, I guess, and you want to keep it for a long time. For myself speaking, like when I bought this Ford, for instance, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, at some point I'm going to have to rebuild this engine or have it rebuilt. And that's going to be like $3,000 or something. I remember doing that kind of math back in the day. And I think people do that same kind of thing with batteries. But, as we've seen now in different studies, the batteries are holding up like a lot longer than, we thought. It's kind of a fair thing to imagine, though, because like some of the early batteries, like the Leaf batteries, especially the first generation Leaf batteries, like sucked.
Yes.
And they degraded way faster than they ought to have. And I think it really started a lot of this whole thing about batteries, wearing out and having to be replaced. And then of course there was also like it's new industry, so like a lot of the early batteries in Tesla Model S, had to be fair amount had to be replaced. I'm not sure what the exact average is, but that doesn't happen nearly as often now. But if you were in like the Tesla forums, you'd hear about people having to have their their motors and or their batteries replaced pretty regularly. You'd hear about it. Not that they'd have to replace them regularly.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about before, like even when you look at kind of more modern, the statistic is way, like, percentage of battery failures is just way lower than it has, ever has been or whatever. But also when you look at kind of pricing of these battery packs now, it's not that much different than what you're going to pay for basically any major component on a modern gas vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at dealership pricing for an engine block or a transmission or whatever, it's pretty similar in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I agree. That's a pretty big misconception that we still kind of see out there. And it's always, everyone's first argument for why you shouldn't get an EV is like, oh, well, in 10 years. I was like, oh, A, probably not. B, any car that you have for 10 years is going to have some sort of major.
Oh, yeah.
Most likely. And if it doesn't, you should be budgeting for when it does eventually happen.
Especially if you don't take care of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we still haven't gotten to the place where, I'm still not comfortable with the idea of like going out and buying an EV with 150 or 200,000 miles on it.
Mm-hmm.
But not necessarily just because of the battery, just like everything. That's like a lot of miles. But and they're still kind of pricey. But I'm thinking in my head, I would buy, or I wouldn't buy, but some people would buy like, a Toyota Camry with like 150,000 miles on it, like no problem, because they have this reputation. So I think that's something that's just going to take time to develop for us as a society to just kind of just get a good grip on the reliability of EVs over significant time periods.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. For some odd reason, and I'm an EV owner, we're a 2 EV household, I would feel more comfortable getting, my 16-year-old son a Toyota Camry with 120,000 miles on it than a Model 3 with 120,000 miles on it. It's just,
right.
I don't know if it's a mental thing, but I just think, that Toyota Camry is probably going to last longer than a Model 3. And it may not, but that's just kind of like this mental thing that we have with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Tesla Model 3s with like 120, actually not bad. Actually, because of, I've driven, like, our friend Kyle has his Tesla Model 3 Performance that, he generously loaned me for a while before I got my car. And so I had some experience like driving a high mileage thing. So it had some suspension issues. Really, it just needed to have some shocks replaced.
I think all early Teslas have suspension issues.
Right. I've hit the 60,000 mile mark a while back, and I'm getting the control arm squeaks now. Like, I've heard about this, and like, I've joined the club apparently, because this is what happens to everybody. Yeah.
So I replaced mine around in my Model Y, which has almost 90,000 miles on it. I replaced mine around 50,000 miles, and I have another squeak. So I asked Tesla, and I asked our repair guy. He said, actually, it could be the lower control arms and not the upper control arms. So he says, that's a service station call. I'm like, oh, great. That's a 2.5 hour drive to Memphis. Lucky me. But that's something
it's a good excuse to go to Memphis.
It is a good excuse to go to Memphis. But
if you like Memphis.
Yeah,
I've only been there once.
Yes, but it's just taking a day off and go there and come back. It's
true.
So that's my next trip out there. Because I said, because he told me he could fix the upper ones mobile. And he's like, maybe the lowers. I'm like, oh, that's good to know. So, yeah. So you kind of hinted at this a little. So, and it may be, battery tech. So what kind of innovations or trends do you think we'll see in EVs over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the big ones I'm looking for is sodium ion batteries, just because it's an even lower cost solution than LFP. It still doesn't have like some of the performance. It can't hit the performance that LFP has gotten to now with energy density, but it's a lot cheaper. So at least for stationary storage, I think it's a great way to free up LFP. LFP and other battery chemistries for EVs. But even I believe somebody in China has put one in a VV. I think it's a little early for that. I don't think they really have the performance for that. But it's another chemistry I think that has potential to do really well. And as well as solid state. Of course, I'm waiting forever. Solid state is like kind of like the holy grail. I just want to see like 500 watt hours per kilogram, sort of like my this target I have in my mind when EV batteries are really good for everything. Like, so with that kind of battery and energy density, you can put it like a battery, like 100 kilowatt hour battery will be a lot, like less, say half the weight of one now, basically. So a sports car could have like sports car dynamics with a battery that light, basically. And so then you'll have, the acceleration, the great, what you call regen. I like the dynamics of having regen in the car. It's like really strong engine braking. I just, really love the way it all works together. Yeah. And so you have speed, you have, ability to turn and stop. And yeah, so those are just two of the main kind of things, I guess, for both batteries, because because EVs are really it's all about the batteries, really. I mean, other parts are important. Battery or electric motor technology has really come a long ways. Inverter technology has really come a long ways, and there's great efficiencies and weight reductions and things happening there. But overall, I think batteries is still kind of like the thing you really want to keep the top line item you really want to keep your eye on.
Yeah, the battery
totally agree.
Affects everything on the car.
Yeah.
You can get more power out of it, or charge it faster, or have greater energy density, whatever. It's like everything else has to work around it. So yeah. So where do you see the future of the EV industry headed, and what role do you think veteran owners and influencers like yourself can play in that evolution?
What was the first part of the question? Where do I see the industry going?
Yes.
It's really hard to say. We're in this tough spot right now. Politically, the landscape's kind of like odd in the U.S. But I think actually, you just got to look up China. China is like a major world power now, and their EV industry is really, their tech is right up there now. They still don't have all the driving dynamics kind of nailed down too. But they're getting there too. They'll get there on that as well, and just have like a superior product overall. And they sell into the same markets as North American automakers do. We all sell in Europe, and we all try to sell in other small markets here and there, like Brazil. We don't hear a whole lot about Brazil, but Chevy has all kinds of, mostly actually imports from other places. If you look at if you go to the Brazil like Chevy website, which I did this last week actually, I was looking for some news, and yes, I know actually, yeah, you see all these Chevys you never really heard of, but I don't know if they're rebadged Chinese cars. They are in some cases, but where do I see the industry going? I think. Yeah, well, we're going to have to just learn to compete with China, because China's really evolved as an industry leader, and I think it's super necessary for North American automakers to get on their level, basically, put it that way. Yeah, because we're not there now, and we have like maybe tariffs protecting us now, and the IRA law, I guess. We have a field of protectionism for our market, but our automakers don't just sell in this market. They sell worldwide. And that's where we have to compete. And so it feels sometimes like okay, with the political turmoil going on and new tariffs and things like we're not going to get there. We're going to be stuck in a backwater sort of technologically speaking, but it'll work itself out. I'm pretty sure. It's just a matter of more time than I wish it took, really.
And I had this conversation today about someone who was kind of anti-EV and things like that, and they said, well, about Ford and GM, they're like, oh yeah, they don't need EVs. They can just build their gas cars and compete in the U.S. And I was like, to realize Ford and GM, they have to compete globally too. So if they don't get it together in the EV market or Stellantis and things like that, these companies, they're not going to be able to compete globally, which they have to do, because if not, China's just going to outsell them easily. I mean, that's why you need people like GM and Ford and Dodge making good EVs so they can compete overseas, because right now they're not. They're getting plummeted over there. And people just don't have the mentality here in the States. They just think the United States and that's it. They don't think how that affects companies globally. So yeah.
True.
Yep.
And they also have to compete with like new and upcoming companies like Tesla, or like Rivian, or like Scout. well, it's kind of a lot of riveting going on there.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe something like a Tello. If I don't know if you're familiar with Tello, the small truck, tiny truck guys with a big truck utility. I love that vehicle, that project. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but you know, I'm rooting for it. But yeah, so it's not even the outside, you know, automakers they need to worry about, but also like homegrown.
Yep.
You know, a company can spring. You just have to get the right ideas together and a good design, appeal to the public, and you can still it's still possible to blow up and create like an actual going concern automaker, like a Rivian in this day, or a Lucid even in this day and age.
Gotcha. All right, I'm going to switch gears and kind of talk about how your life has kind of evolved into being, you know, a podcast host. So, I kind of got the idea of hosting a podcast, you know, early days as an EV owner, listening to y'all four on the Inside EVs podcast, and that's what I used to do. You know, listen to y'all, listen to Martin do the EV News Daily, you know, listen to Tom, and that's how I kind of got the podcast started, and then brought Sebastian in with it. So, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up, you know, working blue collar jobs and owning a Chevy Spark to hosting one of the most popular, you know, EV podcasts, you know, in the world right now?
You make it sound like it's a big deal. I feel like it's not even.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, because I look at our numbers. We do, you know, 5,000 to 10,000, you know, views a week on video and also we have audio. It's not that huge. You know, I'm thinking like,
but it has a huge following, Domenick. I mean, it's just everyone's heard of it. So,
well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's kind of like a total accident, I guess. You know, like I was saying before, I started writing for Autoblog Green, then that morphed into just Autoblog. Then I actually left there around 2015 for like 6 months, and I tried a hand at something totally different, like an office job, working with technology, doing like computer system design and things. And after about 6 months, I got invited to join Inside EVs, the website, to kind of start a forum, which, you know, so the Inside EVs forum is still out there. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that really at this point, because a lot of things have happened since then. But we had it was an interesting exercise for sure. But at some point, early 2020, we're in the group chat in the company, and someone mentioned they had a sponsorship for a podcast, but they didn't have a podcast. Like someone was like offering them some crazy money for a sponsorship for a podcast, and it wasn't even like a public facing company. It was like a, you know, behind the scenes kind of electric components. I was like, I don't really understand why they're even interested, but no one raised their hand. You know, it was like, okay, well, I'm thinking job security, because, you know, the Inside EVs forum was not like a blazing success. I think it was like paying for itself basically, so breaking even. But I thought, okay, I'll stick my hand up, because it's always better to say yes. And, you know, I feel like just if you get an opportunity, you should probably try to take it, you know. And so, yeah, had no experience. I listened to lots of podcasts. The Autoblog used to had a podcast, which you know, I listened to regularly, and there was a few EV podcasts. Nikki, you know, Nikki, Transport Evolved. So I listened to her podcast before. I think might have been called something else before that. So when I used to drive like at nighttime delivering auto parts around North Florida. So I'd download all these different podcasts and listen to them as I was driving. So I just kind of, you know, started from scratch with this very basic, I don't know what I'm doing, and it's, you know, gotten better over time. It's trying to deal with not looking nervous or being nervous when there's like hundreds of people like watching you.
Yeah, one thing we haven't delved into the live, you know, podcast. We re-record our news episodes the day before and then post them. Like they literally come out like an hour after you guys are done usually. But I'm like, I don't know if I can do live. That's a whole nother beast. So.
But you just do it.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. You just you can develop. It's okay if you make mistakes or, it's not life and death. It's just a podcast, Yep. Yeah, so I've made plenty on
earthquakes while you're recording and things like that. I mean, stuff just happens. So
yeah, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yep. I remember listening to that live. I was like, is this real? I mean, is this really happening?
No, I was like that too. I was like, it looks like an earthquake. Isn't it? For those who don't know, I was just going to say, for those who don't know, we were recording an episode of Inside EVs on a Friday, and that's when that earthquake in New Jersey happened, and Tom's desk started shaking, and it was like, started panicking because it was actual earthquake.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry.
And y'all kept going. Y'all didn't stop. Y'all just kept going.
It's live.
Yeah, it's live.
The show must go on.
Yeah. All right, you check that out, Tom, and get back with us. We'll just go on. So yeah.
We'll catch you up later.
Yeah.
So how did you, Kyle, Tom, and Martin all meet up?
I think we're all sort of Inside EV's staff at some point. Well, Martin he was the head of podcasting for Motorsport Network, which owned Inside EVs at the time. I think that's changed somewhat. There were some changes just after I left, or just after I left. I don't remember exactly. There was a whole bunch of change happened, and yes, so he walked away from that eventually. But he was doing that, and so we'd see him. He did a lot of work behind the scenes for different arms of the motorsport. So he'd do Formula One racing announcing, but then he'd also help people like us with our podcasting problems. So excuse me, I can mute that actually.
So y'all were part of kind of like the Inside EV's group, and that's kind of how y'all met.
Basically, like I don't think Kyle didn't really work for Inside EVs especially, but he made such great content that we were using his content all the time. So we were talking to him all the time. I can't remember if he was in our chats or not, but yeah, and I can't even remember. I was thinking about this, and I was like, I can't even remember the first time I actually met him in person. It's like
it's like a movie star.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, it's kind of odd, you meet people, like you watch people on videos all the time, then you meet them in person. It's like you kind of feel like you already know them, and so I don't know if you feel, I don't know, I can be a little bit more like forward or I don't know, open in a way. Just when I meet somebody like I've watched a lot, even though I've never spoken to them before, it's just like, oh yeah, you're my friend, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like forget it. It's like a one-way experience sometimes, But anyway,
so doing this podcast for a while, what's like something that you've heard from a listener or something that just stands out to you over this time doing the podcast, like a memorable story or something like that, like the one you told about being on the Virgin Islands and someone noticing you or something like that. So tell them about that story. You could say that you told us before we recorded. So
yeah, I mean. Yeah, that was kind of interesting because I was on this little island, is tiny, not very many people on it, this person from this side of the bar is like, "Aren't you Drive Electric with Domenick or something?" It's like, my YouTube channel is called Drive Electric with Domenick. It's like, yeah, I guess because I got all this like hair that I grew out during the pandemic, and so I guess it's kind of noticeable. But I guess he was like a regular viewer. He doesn't drive an EV yet, but he likes learning about EVs. So this is part of what I really, really like about this, about doing the show is, every once in a while I meet someone who we've influenced, to get an EV or to get a specific EV or whatever. I really like helping people, I really like, I like actually helping people buy EVs. That's kind of why I'm in this to begin with. I'm not in it, obviously, as you probably could imagine, for the money.
Yes,
so it's not like
so it's a killer money. People don't realize it's killer.
Yeah, no, there's no money.
There's no money
unless you work like 24 hours, like Kyle,
does. Yes, I just don't.
From out of spec, he's like nonstop, and maybe he has money. I don't even know, but he reinvests like as much as he need to, into more videos. He's he's like, So
it's like a big circle. Yeah, I mean, we were starting off, I think, 2 or 3 videos a week. I mean, just 3 videos for us is tough. I mean, we have the news episode, and then we have usually some other content we do, but just finding times, we both work full jobs. Like, how are we going to get time to get a car and review it for 4 hours? We both have jobs, we both have kids, we both have families. So it's just finding time to balance, because most people don't realize most podcasters have full-time other jobs or something else that they do. I mean, we've interviewed people. We interviewed Liv and Patrick. They got full-time jobs. People like that were like, they interviewed some of the great people from the Ford F-150 Lightning Group. They all have full-time jobs. So it's kind of just finding the time, kind of like to fit that in. And one of the things that kind of stood up for us, was we did an episode. I don't know if Sebastian read this in the comments. We did an episode on the reviewed the Ioniq 6. And someone put in the comments, like he said, I just bought this exact same car you reviewed from the Hyundai dealership that you guys talked about. He said, I think it's the same one. It's the black one. It's like, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the only black one they had there. So seeing stuff like that is kind of cool. So,
right. Yeah. That's interesting. I was curious. I was watching that. And you guys do you have like relationships with all the dealerships in your area?
So that has just like been a grind for us. I mean, we kind of started, we want to kind of do reviews, because we start with our buddy owns Evolve Auto, which is a used electric vehicle dealership here in North Little Rock. And I kind of do some social media marketing for him. So we started off just reviewing some cars he'd get in. Like, he'd get an old, Tesla Performance, and Sebastian would review that. Or he got a Highland in, and we wanted to review that. Or he'd get a weird car. Like, I think our first one was he got a Nissan Leaf in that he was selling for $6,000. I was like, well, let's review a $6,000 Nissan Leaf. And then he kind of said, hey, I have this buddy that works at a Chevy dealership. Maybe he can get you a car to review. So he started reaching out to him. I'm like, you know what? Let me just start planting some seeds. So it took a while, because dealerships do not return your emails. They just don't. I mean,
no. You have to do that. That's a face-to-face kind of situation.
So I finally, once we got our name into, like, because we have like 2 or 3 big auto groups here in Central Arkansas. So once we got our name in with 1 or 2 like GMs, and they saw what we were doing, like, this is great. I was like, well, can you share my name with other people in the business? So that's kind of how it just snowballs. Now we're at the point now, it's like, oh crap, we have, Genesis who wants us to review some cars. We have, this dealership,
nice.
We just got reached out by Cadillac. They got an IQ and an Optic in. He was like, hey, anytime you want to come by, review the car. We're like, okay, now we got to fit this into our schedule. So I'm texting Sebastian, what's this day look like? So, I got to do this.
Yeah.
I can't do this day. My son's got robotics and things like that. So luckily we've made those good connection on her. It took some time. What do you think about it? 3 or 4 months, Sebastian, to build up those relationships?
It's a little while, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think we did that Leaf in like September.
Yeah. So that was one of the first reviews that we did. And then, luckily we just started with him, and he had a couple connections that kind of got the ball rolling. And they were like, oh, we got an Equinox. We got a Silverado. So now we have a work truck. So now we've got those. And then we started reaching out to other dealerships. Then we got, Kia and Hyundai, which they were great here. Well, that dealership owns a couple other ones. They own a Ford. They own this. I'm like, well, can you put our name out there and things like that? So now we have kind of a network that we have built up. There's a couple, we haven't got a hold of Porsche or Mercedes yet. We're still holding out for those. So we don't know anyone in that auto group. There's kind of independents, but that's kind of like my next, that's like my summer, spring job, is kind of getting Mercedes, Porsche, things like that. So yeah, so it's just a slug, man. It's feet on the streets is what it is. So
right on.
Yep. Sebastian,
okay. Cool.
Yep.
So what are some of the most common questions or topics that y'all's listeners tend to bring up?
Comes questions. I'm not really. I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on the week.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any particular, question that pops up all the time.
So you just kind of recently started your Battery Bargains podcast. What, about 6 months ago, 8 months ago? I think you started doing that.
Yeah. Right.
So what kind of questions do you see kind of like from those EV owners? Like what are most kind of people looking for? Or is it just all over the board?
It's kind of all over the place a little bit, but I mean, everybody wants something reliable, and they want good value. You don't want to pay. You want to get a lot of vehicle for as little money as possible. Reliability, range is important. People tend to look at range probably more than they look at charging speed, charging speed is at least as important, I think, as range is, really, depending on the car. If you have a car with 300 miles of range, maybe charging speed won't be as important as a car with 200 miles of range, for instance. But like the Audi e-tron, the original one, OG e-tron, that thing only had around 205, 220 miles of range or whatever it was, and but it charges like a monster. So it's not so bad on the road, you know. But
more stops, but less time at the stop. So it doesn't. Yeah. So,
right.
Yep.
Right. Whereas like
on the flip side, if you have an EV that gets 450 miles of range, it's maybe okay if it takes longer to charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to. I mean, most of those ones they have like the 800 volt system, so they charge like pretty good. It's just that they're just like huge, thirsty vehicles, so it takes a while to get enough to translate that into miles. It's a different thing,
right? Yeah. But I mean, if you just drove 300 miles or 350 miles in a one shot, you deserve a break. Like,
you do.
Take the
I really
30-minute
appreciate
break.
it.
You'll
Sebastian and I recently just did a race to Austin, so we went down there for Electrify Expo, and he has a Bolt, and I drove my Model Y thinking I was going to smoke him. I only beat him by what?
An hour?
An hour. I mean,
really?
We had
how far?
How far is that? How far is that?
800 miles?
700 miles?
But we will say this, there was traffic, there was rain, and there was construction. So that kind of slowed everyone down. But
real life.
Yeah, but honestly, the first, we started off at Franklin Charging where Kyle did a video from because, we know JT, we've known JT forever. So we started there with a full charge. I couldn't make it 90 miles until I texted Sebastian. I said, I got to go to the bathroom already. So I was like, you're going to have a little head run start on me. And then I had an issue charging first. I went to one's place and I had an issue charging my Tesla. I had to go where he was charging, so it's just, I didn't beat him by as much as I thought I was going to beat him with. Now, I think coming back, since we started off at different range, we didn't have a race come back. I think I beat him more coming back because we were both starting at like 40 or 50%. That did give me an advantage over him.
Yeah.
So
you
because
started 110%.
110% for the first 2 hours, 250, 2.5 hours, we're tied. So I'm not making any room.
For some reason, Joel booked a hotel that didn't have chargers. So
yeah, I mean,
that's me. Try to find the cheapest one for us.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to find, a hotel like that you want to stay at that has chargers. It's just the way it is, Yep.
And sometimes they don't always list it and things like that. It's just kind of hard
Sometimes
to find.
Sometimes they say they have chargers and they don't.
That happened to me in Nashville. I pulled in for Nashville for a weekend. I said, when I valet parked, because we were like downtown Nashville, I said, do you mind plugging in the EV charger? They're like, why do people keep saying we have EV chargers? Like, well, it says on the description you have EV chargers. She's like, we don't have any EV chargers here. I'm like, well, crap. Maybe I wouldn't have booked it here then. So yeah.
Right. Or they could also have like charger where they're charging like, I don't know, 50 some cents or 80 cents a kilowatt hour, which is like, I think I'll just go to the Electrify America and
Yep. We've seen that. So for some odd reason, EVs, and I don't know why, are very polarizing. People either love them or hate them. So what is the biggest challenge in creating content about EVs, considering there is a lot of negative aspects of EVs out in the environment right now with everything going on politically? You don't even, do you find it more and more being a challenge getting content out there because you see those negative comments and you see everyone saying, I hate EVs, they need to go away and things like that?
I mean, it is it's a challenging environment sometimes, and it's pretty dynamic. It changes a lot. And right now, there's a lot of like Tesla hate out there, for reasons.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, for us, I feel like I was thinking about this today, so I'm a very like a left-leaning kind of person. I'm an independent voter, but, I lean pretty far left. But, for our show, we need to be not political, apolitical. We need to appeal to whoever, anybody who needs a car, basically. We need to be able to appeal to them and try to, treat them and their questions, with respect. And because we're all humans and we're all, struggling to some extent to get, just to have an enjoyable life and do the right things. And so, I mean, that's really, I have to keep myself in check sometimes because I do a little less so on my own personal social media, but even then.
Yeah, you're a little bit more vocal on your own social
sometimes,
media.
I delete comments though. Sometimes I'll put a post up for like a minute and then I read it back.
Maybe not.
I need to. Yeah, it's important to have a tone where, regardless of a person's politics, they can listen to what you're saying and hopefully not get all caught up in the And if people have misconceptions or for whatever reasons, it's always more helpful to just respect where people are coming from. Not everybody's super nerd, super geek in EVs or in science or whatever. So it's just a matter of patience and empathy for where people are coming from, and
totally. I mean,
keeping
that's one thing
political
that's one thing we've taught me and
tribalism in
Sebastian.
check.
That's one thing me and Sebastian have always talked in the podcast. We're not going to turn it into something political. We're not going to get on there and rant about Tesla and Elon, even though we may have some personal feelings about that. That's not what this show's about. We can make our own personal podcast and talk about that, or go for a rant or something like that. But it's not part of what we want to do, because we know that alienates like half your viewers. So you don't, and you don't want to do that. So it's a fine line you have to walk. Even when reviewing cars for dealership, it's a fine line you have to walk, because you give out. You have a bad car. You go get a car. I mean, we recently got a 2024 Nissan Leaf, and we reviewed it. But what did we review before that, Sebastian? The EX30.
We drove the EX30 before.
So we had an EX30, which was awesome. And then we went and drove a Nissan Leaf, and I'm like, all right, let's try to be as positive as we can, because getting in the car, you step back 10 years just by how the inside of the car looks, technology-wise. So we're like,
they have to,
but you don't want to piss them off and then not be able to get a car anymore. So there's a fine line there. You still have to be. You have a obligation to your viewers to be honest about the vehicle, but you also need to respect the people loaning you the car to some extent. Yep. Unless you're Kyle, you just piss everyone off. So
no, generally he's pretty good, but like that Dodge Charger.
The Dodge Charger, he's like, this is crap.
I mean, because he does like we feel like we have a responsibility to our viewers. It kind of it sucks. I know Kyle doesn't like to badmouth the car. He loves cars. But when sometimes you just have to be that way.
I remember we got a comment one time from one of the dealerships we were working with, and we did a video, and I think this was when me and my friend did a quick video. He got a car, and we were talking about, and he made a comment about the noise. He's like, I don't like the noises. It makes a lot of noise for being an EV. I don't like it. And so we shared it with the comment. Our dealership is like, I like the video. Why'd you have to dog it on the noise? We're like, well, it just makes a loud noise when it's the EV sound is louder than it has to be. It's something we just mentioned in passing for like 15, 20 seconds. And he was like, well, that. I'm like, well, we still have to report on that. I mean, when we're bashing it, we just said, hey, this loud, this noise is louder. And Sebastian kind of made the comment too on the Blazer EV. He's like, this is a louder noise than what we have, but it's what it is. So, I mean, that's kind of what it is.
Because we were driving the Blazer, and that hasn't come out yet, but whatever. Yep. And Joel was like, so what's the first thing you noticed? I was like, man, the pedestrian warning sound is really loud in here.
Yeah. Especially at lower speeds, when you get up to highway speeds.
Because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, do I have the fake noises turned on? Like, what is going on? No, it's not. It's just the sound the car makes.
It's just what GM does. They have GM cars have loud pedestrian noises. All of them. All their makes and models do. But that's just something that's just them. I mean, we're not bashing it, but that's just them. So. Yep. Yeah, and the same
thing, when we drove the Leaf, it's like, the Leaf and the EX30 are obviously in very different classes of vehicles.
Yes.
But that's expected, the Leaf has a place still, kind of.
It does,
it might be a harder bargain in 2024.
Right.
But
unless you get a
the one we
stupid
drove,
lease
the
deal.
sticker was 38.
Yeah.
And so that makes it a little harder to stomach. But, if you can get a stupid lease deal, like, there's still a place for it, and people still want basic transportation. That's all they want.
And they want an EV, basic transportation. That Leaf is a perfect vehicle for you.
Yeah, for that. If people aren't road tripping, so they don't need to depend on CHAdeMO fast charging. I mean, it's a perfect acceptable car, especially if you can get, I wouldn't overpay for one.
Yeah,
because there's so many other vehicles out there pretty close to that.
Yeah,
you could buy slightly used something, and
Yep.
But some of those lease deals on the Leaf, man, you can't.
Yeah, it's like
it's hard to walk away.
If I could lease a Leaf for $20 a month,
pay it off, write it off in one payment, and say, "Here, let me in my Leaf, so I'll give it back to you in 3 years." So, Yep.
All right. So when you aren't talking about EVs, what are some other things that drive your interest?
Well,
you touched on it a little bit already, but
Well, so music is a huge part of my life. I write songs and I play them poorly in front of people sometimes.
But hey, good on you for doing it.
Yes.
I've had a little band. It was just I have a bass player I've worked with for the last 5 years or so, and we called ourselves Firefly Rebellion. But it was just nice because it's like brings in harmony. She has a great singing voice, and we harmonize pretty well together. And having a bass, it just adds more to it than just me with a guitar. I do open mics on a regular basis too, so generally just myself, and which is great for just becoming comfortable in front of an audience of people. I mean, live audiences a lot even harder than like with the camera and things. It's especially if when I'm just by myself, it's really
they can say stuff out loud that they can't do on a live podcast. They have to type it. They can say it out loud. So,
or sometimes the room could just be noisy for whatever reason. You know, it's where I play at. Usually it's pretty decent, and sometimes it's really nice and. When the sound's all dialed in and the audience is kind of calmed down, but then sometimes you have to
get a rowdy bunch
to get people's attention.
Yep.
Anyway, but that's really I keep my guitars really close. And
oh, you do? In case you have some downtime.
Oh yeah, I mean I always pull over, and I've been writing this song for like the last 2 months.
Have you recorded anything and put it out there? Or is it just strictly just like, open mic nights?
I recorded it with a band in like the 90s. And I did actually, I have a little pop song that I like that I tried to record late last year. And I kind of screwed up a little bit the way I did it. So I need to redo it. But I need to get in the studio really soon and put down some, really simple recording, so to keep the expense low.
Yep.
So just voice, guitar, bass, and a voice, and just like that. So just the basic, just kind of share the song, so people will be able to listen to that, and maybe if they have an imagination, they could hear what it would sound like with like a drums and electric guitar. Or it's just basically the foundation of the song. It's kind of what I'm about.
That was some of my favorite music in the 90s was just bass guitar and piano. A lot of Ben Folds Five stuff. That's just no drums, just bass guitar and piano. It's a whole different kind of music to listen to. It's really cool. So before we wrap it up for the day, any final thoughts? And if people want to find you on social media, where do they need to look?
See. So on social media, I am at just my name, Domenick Yoney. I think you should find me. You should be able to find me. Drive Electric with Domenick is my YouTube channel. It's a little off the rails at the moment. I need to really kind of buckle down and start doing. I've finally got it monetized. I'm really not taking full advantage of that, which is terrible. I feel guilty about it all the time.
Leaving money on the table, Domenick. Come on now.
I am. I am. And struggling at the same time. So yeah. So yeah, I'm out there on pretty much all the. I'm not on X.com. I am on Threads, and I've been enjoying Blue Sky quite a bit actually. I don't get a lot of Threads. Really works well for me as far as response and feedback and interactions. But I really like the Blue Sky app probably more. I don't really use Facebook on that much, but I look at it a lot. So.
We've noticed too on Threads, our interactions has gone way up recently. I don't know if that's because of the whole turmoil with X or anything like that, but we started getting a lot of reposts and everything on X. Volvo shoots out stuff out of it, or shoots out Sebastian stuff every once in a while. And I like you're the same way. I like the format of Blue Sky. I don't get the interaction on Blue Sky like I do on Threads. So
the Threads EV community is EV Threads, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on that.
Yep.
Yeah, it gets a lot of, for whatever reason, the algorithm likes it more.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, Sebastian, take us out.
All right. Well, Domenick, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. You can tune into the Batteries Included podcast with Domenick, Kyle, Martin, and Tom live on Friday mornings, as well as their midweek episodes called Battery Bargains, where they give their buying advice to potential EV owners. Both can be found on the Batteries Included YouTube channel and all major audio podcast platforms. We will have links down in the show notes. As always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tap our notification icon so you can be alerted when our new videos drop. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you again on another EV Geek podcast episode. So long, everyone.